What's going on, Sabres fans, and welcome to another episode of the Sabres Spotlight podcast, where we shine a light on all things Sabres hockey. We're coming at you today with a reaction episode. We got some big news today regarding a core piece of the Sabres being extended, and it's maybe not who you thought. But on today's show, we're going to break down Josh Doan's new deal and some of the implications for the Sabres roster going forward. But first, I just want to kind of give you my initial knee-jerk reaction when I heard the news. Just so excited. This is a kid that you feel like has embraced Buffalo ever since he's been here. And he's shown it all on the ice. He has played with a ton of effort, a ton of heart. He's gotten in some fights. He does it all. He hits. He'll block shots for you. You know, the effort is there every single night. He's got a good attitude. You know, everything that we love so much about Zach Benson, we see in Josh Doan, and I give a lot of credit to Kevin Adams, former Sabres GM, for, in a way, getting this done, because remember, he was kind of a throw-in to the J.J. Peterka deal. Michael Kesselring, who has yet to really, find his footing with the team and get healthy and make an impact, was the main piece that the Sabres were really looking to get in this deal for J.J. Peterka. And Kevin Adams basically said it's not getting done unless Josh Doan is thrown in. And Utah throws him in, and he's just really kind of taken off ever since. So I was super happy when the news came across that he was getting this deal. I'm not going to get into the specifics, and I don't know. I don't really enjoy breaking contracts down on the whole, like, oh, do I think this is too much money or not? I'm glad the guy got $6.95 million AAV. He's 23 years old. And ultimately, I think that's a fine number, and we'll see. We'll see what happens as the contract goes, and we'll see if he lives up to that. But he's on pace for 24 goals and 32 assists this season. He currently has 15 goals and 20 assists. So 35 points through 51 games. Again, that puts him on track for 56 points in his first season with the team. He's currently fourth on the team in points, behind only Tage Thompson, Alex Tuch, and Rasmus Dahlin. He leads the entire NHL in takeaways with 35. And he has a 54.9% expected goals at 5-on-5 when he's on the ice. And that leads every single Sabres player on the roster so far. So again, I'm just kind of really happy that this news came through. He's now locked in through the 2032-2033 season. And Jarmo spoke on this today and said, this is a direct quote from Jarmo. It says, Josh is a player who impacts the team on and off the ice. He works hard, is competitive and skilled, and his game will continue to develop. We believe he will be a core piece of this team moving forward. And those are some pretty big words from your new GM. Also, the first really big move that we have seen from Jarmo Kekalainen as he's been in charge. And so it's an interesting quote, especially him saying that, he's a core piece, and obviously he is with the deal and the term. But it does make you wonder what's going to happen next and who is Jarmo believing is a core piece of this team, because you can't have too many. We'll get into that a little bit later as we go. But as of Wednesday, January 21st, Josh Doan is going to be a Buffalo Sabre for the next 7 years, and I am ecstatic for that. He's been nothing but complimentary of the city and the fans since he's gotten here. The attitude, I just love it all, and the effort on the ice. He is one of those glue guys that we talk about. Again, like a Zach Benson, like some of these young kids coming up and playing with a lot of passion, these are the kind of guys that Lindy's going to love, that Jarmo's going to love. Jarmo talked about with that consistency on the ice, that character, high character level, that compete, high hockey IQ, intelligent hockey player, knows where to be. Couldn't be happier that the Sabres locked him in. And 23 years old. At the time that this contract expires, you're looking at a 30-year-old player. You know, you're in the Alex Tuch situation, and you can see some similarities in their games. And so, you fast forward here, we'll be having this conversation about Josh Doan in another 7 years, and hopefully it's a contract that has aged well. You got to remember too, the NHL salary cap is going to be going up, so a lot of these deals are going to look, a little bit like more of a steal, in the next coming years when the actual percentage of the cap that you're using up goes down as the total cap increases. But breaking down the contract a little bit more, the contract itself carries a modified no movement clause that kicks in 2029, and it's a 7-team no trade list. So just something to kind of store in the back of the mind. Again, things like this can be waived, but just something to, again, kind of have in the back of your mind if things down the road, if we're looking like this is a contract that we need to move or something's going to happen, he does have some trade protection here starting in 2029. Although I don't necessarily, hopefully that's not something that we're looking at, because Josh Doan is just continuing to take off as a player and getting even better with the Buffalo Sabres and really taking hold of what Jarmo says being a core piece of this team. But just something that I noted with the contract, and that good for him, gives him a little bit of protection, in those last handful of years. A very interesting point to this, and something I want to spend a little time on. $7 million in bonus money for Josh Doan. Now, the reason this is significant is because it's not uncommon for Terry Pegula and the Sabres to hand out bonus money, but a multi-year signing bonus structure is something that we haven't really seen with ownership and with contracts in a long time. So this is a new way of doing business for the Buffalo Sabres and for Terry Pegula. And with the change in GM, it might give you a hint at a different way that they're going to handle their business going forward. And this is a good sign. This tells me that Terry Pegula is more engaged, more willing to potentially open the checkbook, and these things matter to players. I mean, if you look at the Sabres rosters over the last few years, Tage Thompson had a 1-year signing bonus. Rasmus Dahlin had a 1-year signing bonus. Owen Power, 1-year signing bonus. Josh Doan has $7 million in signing bonus money, $3.5 million for the first 2 seasons, each year getting $3.5 million. So a positive signal from Terry Pegula that the checkbook is opening a little bit more, and a new wrinkle of Sabres management and contract structure and contract negotiations with players. And ultimately, this is good news. This means that there's another avenue of potentially enticing players to come to Buffalo if you're able to, hand them a little bit of bonus money up front. And when you're in a market that you're going to be, competing with some of these other teams, how can you separate yourselves? And, this could be one way that they can make themselves more competitive, potentially in a smaller market like Buffalo, is if we're able to give some guys some bonus money for a couple of years. So hidden, a little bit of a hidden thing there, but really, I think a really important and just a really important sign from from management that we're hopefully heading in the right directions with the Sabres' willingness to carry through on some contracts and negotiate and see things through in a little bit of a different way to hopefully get things done. So it's going to happen on probably every podcast that you listen to reacting to this. Of course, we're got to compare this to JJ Peterka's deal, right? And who would have thought? Again, Kesselring was the main piece of this. You get Josh Doan coming over as a throw-in, and here we are comparing him to JJ Peterka. But JJ Peterka gets a 7.7 million AAV contract from the Utah Mammoth, 7 years. 16 goals and 16 assists for Peterka. Peterka's sitting at 32 points. So Josh Doan has 3 more points than JJ Peterka so far on the season. On pace to finish around, the same as far as points go. And I think the question you really need to ask yourself with these two players is the ceiling of JJ Peterka that much higher than Josh Doan? And we saw flashes of JJ Peterka's offensive brilliance here. He had really good offensive numbers here. He's a goal scorer, but there's no denying that goal scoring was streaky. It was inconsistent. Play was inconsistent. Was a liability on the power play. Could never be used in any type of special teams situation. Not to mention, attitude was pretty terrible. Effort was questionable at times, and you knew he didn't want to be here. So, for $800,000 less, you're telling me you get Josh Doan, a guy who works his tail off every single night, has as well-rounded of a game as you'll find, just a grinder in the NHL. He's already played on multiple lines for the Sabres and showed that he can play on multiple lines. He doesn't need to be necessarily in that top line role to be producing. And JJ Peterka is definitely not somebody that Jarmo Kekalainen is signing to a long-term deal. Again, when you talk about that consistency of play, when you talk about that character, the effort, every single night, it wasn't going to be someone that Jarmo was looking to lock up to this long-term deal. And so I'll gladly take my Josh Doan at 6.95. And again, we'll see what happens with this contract. It maybe feels a little steep right now, but who's to say? Who's to say? Again, you're paying the guy for what he's going to become, not what he is right now, right? And who he is right now is a pretty dang good hockey player. And that projected growth, this contract could look really good, in a few years. And again, when you add in that little piece about the cap going up, we'll see what happens. But the first big move from Jarmo Kekalainen, the first big signing of his tenure, and I'm happy with it. I think Jarmo's off to a good start here. Now, he can't be done, obviously. The Sabres are in that wild card one spot. It's almost February. You got the Olympic break coming up, so it's going to be an important couple weeks for Jarmo to hopefully add to this team and make it better. And this is, hopefully this is kind of a sign that he's kind of picking up momentum, wanting to get some things done. Let's talk about how this might affect an Alex Tuch extension. It's been reported that Tuch wants, north of $10 million per season with his contract. If you've been listening to the show since we've been back for the last few weeks, on the last show, I talked about Alex Tuch and how I officially planted my flag of wanting him to sign with the Sabres. And so now you add in this Josh Doan deal, and you just got to think to yourself, how can this all piece together? There's going to have to be some corresponding move. Now, again, with the cap going up, the cap's currently sitting at $95.5 million. It's going to go up to $104 million next season in 2026, and it'll go up to $113.5 million in 2027. So next year, the Sabres are projected to have $13 million in cap space. Now, it's including this Josh Doan deal, so they're still projected to have $13 million in cap space. So theoretically, if you give Alex Tuch, $10 million a season, you have that room. But there's going to be other moves that are made. You have some RFAs that you're going to need to sign, so you're going to need a little bit more than $13 million in cap space. Who knows if you bring anybody else in? So you have to. Right now we're going to kind of operate under the assumption that you're going to need more than $13 million in cap space next year. But you do have a good little buffer there as far as getting a Tuch extension done. Now, there are potential levers, that Jarmo could pull to try and create some cap space that could come in the form of trades. Contracts. The only contracts to me that really make sense as far as moving money out would be, again, your guys who are kind of like a cheaper deal, expiring contracts, not this year, but the year after, things that you can move off the books. Jordan Greenway comes to mind, and Jack Quinn comes to mind, Zucker and Timmins. These are contracts that are very movable, low numbers, and certainly guys who are, supplemental type players that could be moved in a deal with a pick or with picks, for a player and to free up some space. These are also guys who could be potentially moved this year. But these are all the things that Jarmo's going to have to weigh, because I think that they want to get Alex Tuch signed. He's another guy that just seems like fits that Kekalainen mold of how he wants his team to play. High effort, high hockey IQ, consistent, these character guys. That's what you need to build. That's how you build the culture in Buffalo, is by signing these types of guys. And again, I won't go on my Alex Tuch rant again. You can go back and listen to the last episode if you want. But for all those reasons, I think it'd be a good signing, and there's some options there as far as moving some money off the books, and that's why Jarmo's here to make those moves and to see what he can do. Now let's look at the core of the team a little bit more, because what Jarmo does going forward with this new Josh Doan contract on the books, with this kind of impending Alex Tuch deal or no deal type situation, it's really going to come down to who does he see as the core of the team. And that's a big question right now, because I would think locks as far as core of the team goes is, of course, Tage and Dahlin. I'm going to put Josh Doan in that bucket now, and Ryan McLeod. So, let's go forward. So I think you have 3 forwards right now locked in as core pieces. I'm only putting Tage, Josh Doan, and Ryan McLeod into that bucket of core pieces locked up for the foreseeable future. Remember, Ryan McLeod signed that 4-year extension last season. He's making $5 million a year. Perfect contract for Ryan McLeod. As far as the defense goes, I have 3 other locks. On my end, I got 3 other locks. Dahlin, of course, Bowen Byram, and Matthias Samuelsson. Those are my 3 locks as far as core pieces going forward. And Dahlin's obviously the big money deal. Byram, manageable right now, 6.25. But the way he's playing another couple of years, that number could go up. But again, cap goes up. And Samuelsson, stud. Sammy's a stud. And that contract right now is looking like a steal. would not have said that last year. That's how quickly things can change. That is how quickly things can change. And so there's other guys on this team right now who next year will be locks, and it's just kind of wild. I have one other lock here, and that's in goal, and that's UPL. I think Jarmo likes him. I think he's playing good. And if you look at just organizationally where they are in the goalie position, Alex Lyon, I like him a lot, but he's on a 2-year deal. And is he necessarily a core piece? Could he be? He could be a core piece as like a 1A, 1B, type situation with UPL. But to me, I think that Jarmo Kekalainen likes UPL. I think he wants him to be the guy. He has a contract already. That's, a manageable contract for the next 4 years. So I'm putting him in my lock. So Sabres Spotlight locks right now as far as core pieces go. Tage Thompson, Josh Doan, Ryan McLeod, Rasmus Dahlin, Bowen Byram, Matthias Samuelsson, and UPL. Those are my locks. Now, questionable players, I have Owen Power in here, Josh Norris, and Alex Tuch, right? We just talked about Tuch. Power, I don't know. Some nights I love Owen Power, and some nights not so much. Consistency is obviously an issue. Josh Norris, we all know the issues there is just injury and staying healthy. These 3 pieces are very interesting to me. I like them all, but these are guys who can all be moved. And Jarmo's going to have to make a decision on, are they core pieces of this team? Do they embody what everyone else does? And when I go through my list of who I've identified here as locks, I feel pretty comfortable about putting Tuch in that list as long as he gets the deal. I don't feel comfortable putting Norris or Power in that list. And so that's what kind of leads me to believe that maybe Power could get moved. Josh Norris could be moved if they can make that happen. Obviously, there's an injury history. There's no denying he's a good player when he's on the ice, but is that something that they want to deal with? He's on the books for nearly $8 million on a long contract. So is that something that the Sabres really want to lock themselves into, for the foreseeable future? It's going to be interesting. But this Josh Doan contract has kind of shaken things up a little bit, helped put a little bit of things into perspective. But again, when you look at the Sabres roster right now, Josh Doan is obviously a core piece, and he's one of those building blocks. And we'll see what happens as the next few weeks come about. But I wanted to get on here and go through this, and I'm glad we were able to kind of hash some things out and talk about this contract and some of the stipulations with it, compare it to, some of the players that have been here before, like JJ Peterka, and really kind of, talk about some roster building for the future here, because it's going to be an interesting time for the Sabres. I think we're going to be busy over these next few weeks as we march towards the Olympic break and the trade deadline. And I think Jarmo is going to be busy. There's been a lot of moves in the NHL. The NHL has not been quiet, and it's a competitive year. A lot of teams are still in it. There's only a few teams that have really, bowed out of the races. And so with that competitiveness going on, teams are looking to make moves, and I think it's going to be fun. I'm excited. We have something to be excited about as Sabres fans now that we have a GM that we're, looking to get behind and feel comfortable or feel confident that he's going to make some moves. Not do nothing when your team has lost 13 games in a row, like Kevin Adams last year. I think Jarmo Kekalainen sees that he's got something special going on with the Buffalo Sabres right now. The team is playing good. They're playing their tails off every night. And I think he wants to reward the boys. And he just did with Josh Doan. Again, another good thing. Show the guys that if you're going to come here and work, you're going to get rewarded. Lots of positives from this Josh Doan moves. Has me excited. We're going to be back in a few days recapping this week that was Sabres hockey. If you're listening to this on Wednesday, you already know. Tough loss to Carolina 2-1. Thought the Sabres played good, though. A nice bounce-back win against Nashville last night. Got a little hairy there for a little bit. We'll recap all of this, in a few days when we talk again. But had to get on here and talk a little Sabres hockey with the Sabrehood because of this exciting news with Josh Doan getting the 7-year deal. Again, locked up through the 2032-2033 season. So weird to say 2030. But that's going to do it for today's show. Hope everyone liked this little mini episode and is just as excited as me about this Josh Doan news. As always, if you don't already follow the show on Twitter, follow us at Sabres Spotlight. You can email us at our Gmail account. All that's in the show notes below. But let us know what you think. Leave a comment if you're watching on Spotify, leave a comment on the show or reach out to us on Twitter or send us an email. Let us know how you're feeling about this Josh Doan news. And as always, stay safe in the Sabrehood. And we'll see everybody in the next episode. Take care.